just press the button. Hey everybody, you ready to get going? Let's move it. Okay, are you in the Healing the Broken Project presentation? That's where you're supposed. Okay, let's do it. All right, my name is Aimee Degnan. I'm the CEO and boss lady of Hook 42 with Kristen Pohl. And I've been doing big enterprise technology and big enterprise project management for some time. And then we started the Hook 42 company, and we do agency work and client projects. And you guys probably know who we are, but we do complex projects, which is a big deal. Process automation, Drupal, migrations, a lot of hard stuff. We also do project recovery. Who are you? Who's a project manager in here? Okay, not that many. So this deck was written for a conference for project managers. So if I get a little dry with terminology, just let me know if you don't know what the terminology is, because it's all meant for project managers. Who's a business analyst? Okay, we've got a couple. Developer, okay, more. Project sponsor, who pays the bills? No one, but that's a very important role. And who does all? Yeah, there's a lot of us that do that. All right, so we're gonna go fast in the slowest, fastest way I can. Enjoy the ride. I'll put the slides up, and it's gonna be videoed. And please ask questions along the way. So as we talk through this, we're gonna discuss how a project can break. This was based on a case study, and I diluted it a little bit for this this conference, but we're gonna just use this as an example for discussion about what's going on. We're gonna identify challenges, we're gonna cover tools and solutions, and have some Q&A, and it's gonna go fast. So first of all, what does healing mean? First of all, yes, let's make something healthy, whole, or sound, and restore to health. Also, let's just end this, like let's get this done. And then I love this one, it's to free from evil or purify. And a lot of broken projects, you do want to free yourself from this evil project. Because it's like, when will this project be done? Who's felt like that? Okay, yeah, it's a pretty, yeah, seriously. And what does broken mean? Yeah, it's basically been fractured or damaged and no longer in one piece or working order. And so how do you quantify a broken project? You know, how can it break? Lots of ways. And then also, this also goes with the purification moment. It's broken of a person means the person has given up all hope and is despairing. And so some of us have been in those projects where we're just like, will this work? So, how did that? Okay, that came up way over to the side, but how can a project break? Let's talk. It's the afternoon, we're all sleeping. I didn't bring this, but technology, right? What if your technology is not very good? Or the implementation of the technology. Maybe it's really gone past schedule. The quality is crap. You're like, what? This will not be able to run anything at all. You're gonna have budget overruns. And also humans. Humans break. Humans break each other. Humans break the tech, that type of thing. What other kind of breakage do we address in projects? Does anybody have any examples? It's 3:45 in the afternoon, so I'm just going to keep going. There's a point where I'll have you just get up and jump when the music starts. So, but because this was a case study, I'll talk a little bit about it. The business was to provide resources and education and certification in ballroom dancing. It was not ballroom dancing, but for this it will be. So I've switched what this is. It's basically the website is an online presence to post classes, purchase classes, have memberships, manage certifications and level of teaching, and also manage a membership in the organization. And the team was the client team is a small non-technical team, And they've worked together for over 20 years. So they're very proud of their existing process and tools that was leading in the late 90s. And they really, really know how to run their business. And what's interesting, who's actually worked with people who are responsible for budget? A few, okay. So only the owner was responsible and visible to the budget because it's a small team. Only the owner to the site, and this person is not heavily involved in the project. So that's risky. It's weird, right? And so you have a team that's not technical and not bound by responsibility to budget. That means that's kind of interesting. I wonder what foreshadowing this will bring. So, but they had some problems that they wanted to solve because they were on old technology. They wanted to grow their business, improve security, improve the web and infrastructure they had. They were paying really high hosting costs. They want to make sure that that's because it's from the 90s, right? They haven't moved it. And then they also wanted to engage in an external technical team to help support them because they're not getting any younger. And that sounds pretty easy. Who has had a project similar to this, like this model? It's a commerce site. It has people sign up. Everybody should be like, yeah, okay. So yeah, okay. But basically, we ended up answering a distress call from them. So they had been referred to us by a team member, and they're serviced by a different firm. The project had been going on for 4 years. Now, this was a migration from like 4 different sites into one, but that's a really friggin' long time for a project of this scale and type. And the client, when we first talk to them, they say, oh, the site's almost done. We've seen it. It's almost done. And then the client also lost confidence in the previous agency. And they're just looking at first someone to review the work. And so, there's a moment, Kristen's in here, we have this moment that should we take their client? Number one, they're auditing their agency's work. We're okay if people audit our work because we're normally do things right, but that client is auditing it. So, does that feel good? The budget has possibly been burned because it's been going on for so long and so much time has passed, and the client has admitted to something I call project fatigue. And project fatigue is just like everybody's at that point of get this thing done. All right now, or get it launched. And so it was not an easy decision for us because at Hook 42, our core values are being morally and ethically good. Also create high quality work. And that was hard for us. There was a moral decision on taking this client. But we do high quality work, and so we thought about it. We engaged the client because we felt very bad for their lost investment. We're really good at recovery projects, and we will help review the site's tech. So we just came in for the tiniest little bit, and we just helped, but carefully. We had a limited red flag tech audit, just a few hours, just to see it's the code smell, how much things were hacked and how many things were patched, how many modules, a very, very high, quick level of what are we going to maybe get into. And but we had no intent to take any of the project over or the client over. And what we did is made sure that all work, scope, and time was super controlled, because at this point the client, you can tell, has been just this rolling ball of money for 4 years, and so we were very sensitive to that. Yeah, go ahead. No note of our work to existing agency? Yeah, we came in with the best decorum and just used their accounts. It's just nope, don't let anybody else know that we're in here. Because it was only 16 hours, right? We came in, we're not going to be working on anything. Let's just take a quick pulse of how is it okay. But the tech flunked with the most basic of standards. And we sometimes will put a grading system because people understand it. So many aspects got D's and F's, security patches weren't up, and Live is a different database than Dev, and all the features were overridden in weird ways, and nothing, it was just a mess. And we gave the information to the client, but they were just waiting on the last delivery from the agency. But this tiny little engagement exposed so many risks of what a broken project would look like. And so our eyes were open, but we're like, okay, the biggest things was a huge amount of technical debt, the poorly managed infrastructure, and limited code management. And so time passed, and they said, okay, we're ready. Can you please estimate in time and cost how long is it to finish the project? Who's had to do that with no information? Yeah, that's pretty cray-cray, so it's not possible. And we could not create an estimate with the amount of knowledge. We were only in there, we didn't talk to them about what the functionality was. We just said, you have 4,000 modules, and they're all bred for security, and that it's interesting, let's just say. But we did engage them on a second engagement, which is a time and budget controlled, deeper technical audit and a bit of functionality. We had a little bit of discovery phase for them to walk through the site and going okay, this is what we expect, because they told us the site was almost done. And it's Saturday afternoon, and then the mitigations. We were like, okay, when we started with them, we're just going to make sure we document everything, okay? And if you don't document everything right now, you should always document everything. And we also made sure all assets were shared with the client, and we normally do this, but the lack of transparency I think they had with the last engagement was a bit debilitating for them. And we're like, okay, yeah, sure, we can do this, no problem. And when we started at the second engagement, the goal was to improve client morale. And so basically we identified and executed quick wins on the project as much as we could. And also to have a supportive and consistent team, so as we were discussing with the client, they would just tell us all sorts of wonderful things. And so one of the things was the last team was like a revolving door. And so a lot of tacit knowledge that was gained from the project and from all of these meetings, it wasn't written down. The information can be passed from one person to another. And so it was just basically tanked because there was no consistency. And also then that exhibited in the tech. There was 5 different PDF generator modules on there, right? And 4 different ways to do licensing on Drupal Commerce, and everything was not patched, and it was just scary. So we also wanted to establish client trust, right? Because the humans were broken in this moment, right? We came in and the humans were broken, and the tech was too, but we're like, let's fix that. And so it's huge here that you, even as the development team and leadership team, you have to listen, understand, and carefully suggest, right? Because you still have to educate these people to make decisions and stuff, but you can't force them to do anything. And then we also wanted to keep development moving, but correctly and swiftly. And so they had enough technical debt that was pretty... We was like, oh, we can keep busy with that. And then we also want to quickly identify and develop any gaps in their functionality. And so we started them outright. Let's do a project kickoff and a team communication plan, and we tried to get a project schedule, like a rough general one. We're like, oh yeah, it's a commerce site and it has these functions. Here's a rough schedule based on our knowledge. We were like, let's give you some status reports, because we heard that the last team didn't give them any information like this. And we also made sure that we set very consistent meetings, and so they had an anchor of relationship with the project, because the human was broken, and they had lacked a lot of trust. So we had to do everything very deliberately to regain their trust and to provide a kind of a hug for them. And we also made sure that the team was consistent and capable, and we worked through a budget burn down for them. And then we started this initial discovery. We only had like a little chunk because they were like, oh yeah, we'll just do some end-to-end walkthroughs using the existing site. We'll just tell us where the gaps are. Because they said that they assumed the site was almost done. Yeah, never trust your clients. Seriously. Especially when they're non-technical. We allotted a limited amount of time for this end-to-end walkthrough because we're like, oh, we're going to just do a little gap analysis and testing. We took a very functional approach to expose those gaps. And it was really hard because the site wasn't as built as much as it should. And then one of the things we do, who uses project management scheduling software here, like MS Project or Omniplan or something?
Does Pivotal count?
Yeah, well, no, I'm talking about a WBS with like a time and budget scheduler. So we made an initial schedule, but because they were the base minimum of their technical skills was using Excel spreadsheets and a Word document. Seriously and questionably. They're not super technical. We use the smart sheets to create the dynamic schedule, but I do not suggest doing that anymore because it really wasn't a good tool. But it was accessible and understandable to all, understandable within context, at least we thought at the beginning. But they didn't have all of the deliverables defined. They didn't know how to talk about them, how to name them. And we couldn't even clearly name the tasks and milestones that are needed to create the project itself. And surprise, the site wasn't as complete as the client said. It has extremely little project documentation. And who's been here where discovery leads to more discovery? It's like the onion. I can't get to the root of this. That was huge, and more tech issues were surfaced as the deeper we get into it, right? And the biggest woes is we're like, can you please give us any documentation at all from the last company? And it was a web redesign as well, so there's not a single web design asset, no as-is nodes, no to-be requirements, nothing. No technical implementation notes of what it was currently on the site. And also, get this, and this happens because it's life, the client's SME, subject matter expert, who was responsible for their old site, died. The technical guy that knew all the business rules for the last 20 years had died. And that doesn't make it any easier because he was the only guy that knew all the pieces that worked together. And the client really just said the previous vendor just built stuff. And I want to really tell you how much documentation. There was one Excel spreadsheet that one developer had made to have membership levels tied to like a code. There was one PDF of a couple of tasks, like maybe 100 tasks, but no order, no status, and that was it. For a 4-year-long, 4 sites to 1 commerce project. No fucking kidding. Isn't that crazy? Yeah, I'm like, what? It was entertaining to say the least. But seriously, we're laughing, and my thought was, wow, the client is super lenient for so long. And how could they have lasted this long? But they have never gone through a project like this, right? And they didn't know. But then it still smells bad. You're like, wait. But they would see the site, they'd get walkthroughs, but then they can't touch it, right? So it was really weird. And so it exposed more risks, that the impact of the lack of their consistent team was large. There was no business objectives defined, right? So that was like, where the fuck are we going? Sorry. Lack of transparency. They didn't even, no documentation. The complete lack of requirements. They're like, well, we had this meeting 3 years ago where they talked about this. And the missing incomplete correct features, it was a huge gap from what complete should be. Like, it wasn't almost done. And also this other vendor had them on like Black Mesh for a whole year of paying for it without actually like going live. So that was like $1,200 a month that they were just spending on air.
Awesome.
This is real. Yeah, you guys should be all nervously laughing because this is what other things happen. It's like, blah. Anyway, so the risk with the lack of transparency, where like we put everything on Google Docs, it's the simple stuff, right, that helps. Write it down, put it somewhere where they can share, teach them how to use it. We had to make sure every asset was at the most simplest of formats because they just weren't technical. Also, all meetings were documented with notes and all meetings were recorded because what we found out as we were doing these discovery sessions is they would change their story. And one person didn't know what the other person was doing, and even though they have a small team that worked together for 20 years, they all did their very siloed roles. And so they had no idea what a complete business process looked like for their team. And this tool was supposed to glue all of these processes together. And so we really hit the risk of lack of requirements pretty early. We did discovery walkthroughs very early. Like I said, we did the focus on end-to-end functionality. We documented the new requirements. And then also we were like, hey, we're gonna take your we're gonna put you on Pantheon and give you a sandbox because your site doesn't need to be paying like $1,200 a month for this. So we took them on a sandbox site to do the development, and that also really helps alleviate some budget stress. And you know, even the last client didn't go through a hosting analysis with them. So we took 2 hours to walk through all the different hosting vendors, their costs, their pluses and minuses, and said, okay, out of all of these, what would you guys like to do? You know, and then we helped to get them on Pantheon. And, you know, they were really feeling abandoned and very frustrated and very angry and very tired. And they were and are sometimes abrasive and defensive. Very abrasive and defensive. But really their intent is good. They're very hopeful to finish, but they're very wary of change because not only have they used the same tool for 20 years, if you insert how old they are at the same point, not being ageism, they're just really scared of change, right? And everybody should be scared of change a little bit, but they're really, really scared of it because, you know, if they can't move this business, they can't get paid. So what we did is we really prepared our team and we had an open discussion about their client feelings, not with the client, but with our team. And we had to just say and be honest how messy the tech is, and it's not going to be this glorious friggin' project, right? Everybody's going to get their hands dirty, and you're going to be like, well, what do we do, and what type of architecture is this, and do we spend time and budget tweaking things and everything? So it was interesting, and we did check in with people fairly frequently at check-ins and stand-ups. And I tried as much to limit the direct exposure to the dev team, to the client, because it's special. So then we started some work, right? And very quickly, the discovery challenges, and I talked about this before, was they would keep on saying, oh, I don't need this tool. But the other one in another meeting would say, no, I need this tool. You have to build this. And so they were really long meetings. They seemingly did repetitive topics. They called things inconsistently. Very overloaded terminology. It's like if you called a node, like node. They meant node in many different ways. That's kind of what they called their own product. And each meeting led to more meetings. And it was like never ending. And the site really wasn't even complete to test for gaps, so we couldn't even look at their mid-dev site at all, right? And then they kept on saying no one is listening to us. And I'm like, well, I have the amount of hours we've been listening to you, saying that we are listening to you, but I didn't say it that sassily. But I was like, why are they not being heard?
How did you say that?
Oh, I said, you know, you keep, I did actually, it's pretty, I said, you know, you keep saying that we're not listening to you, but we've gone through these meetings. What is missing? Okay, and then they're like, we haven't talked about X, and we didn't talk about Y, and I'm like, okay, well, tomorrow's meeting we're talking about X, and Friday we're talking about Y. Done. Parked it. I don't care what friggin' priority is. The priority is like they would not let it go. And they were like getting a panties in the bunch. I'm like, nope, not gonna happen on my watch. Because it's like, it's like a small child. Like, and it was gonna be in a fit. I'm like, no, okay, I'm going to address that problem right now, because if it just needs us to listen, then that's gonna be okay. But really, it wasn't discovery meetings or therapy happened a lot. And even when the project started correctly, it still didn't heal. Like, these were meetings that went on, and everybody was feeling like it's never going to end. And what was wrong, even though we started off well, we couldn't get a solid deliverables list, like the list of stuff to build, and there was not enough info to technically and correctly architect the site. And so the business needs to the tech translation was not sufficient for the dev team to actually make cogent decisions. And the team was building, but they weren't completely sure if it was the 100% right path. And for those who have done very in-depth requirements management activities, the process as we came in at the very beginning, because we assumed it was just going to be a small gap, we were going to make some tickets and go, oh yeah, that's this missing thing. Here's the information. But no, they needed a much bigger, like the very beginning requirements and a full-blown discovery engagement. And it was so difficult for them because they didn't know any of the tech. So even when we showed them the old site, they're like, or the new site, they're like, oh, what is that? I don't see, why is it wrong? And we're like, it's mid-work, we can't, I don't know why it's wrong. And they could not do analysis homework. Okay, so who has had clients where you're like, can you please go collect the 3 reports and write down the steps that you actually interact with them? They couldn't do it, right? And I'm like, really, I want to save you guys some time and budget. If you do this by yourself, then we can make some movement here, and they couldn't. And they never have gone through a robust type of project as this migration and redevelopment. But the business owner's like, I'm paying this money, let's keep going, let's move it, what's going on? And it was hard to separate the past and present. They're like, we had this meeting, and I'm like, that was the last client, or that was the last vendor. We still get it, and they're like, and then they'll admit it, they're like, oh man, we totally forgot, yeah, that was the last vendor. And it was really, yeah, seriously, that's like, don't get angry at us, we're just new here. But with the work, if our work was not complete, 100% complete and ready, we were just like the old vendor, which was just, you know, magic, waving magic in the air. And so it's so important for us to get it as close to right as possible, but it made it completely almost impossible to ask for clarification until it was almost done. Right? So that was like, okay, well, we just need to slow down and understand exactly what we're building before we even touch anything. And on our team, we were fearful of never-ending discovery, you know? And they like to talk to people. I think they kind of really like to have these discovery meetings because they get to chat about stuff. And we did not anticipate a full discovery effort, and the team, that was not me, was very afraid to discuss the gaps with the sponsor because it was like, oh shit, this is going to cost a lot more money. And what I saw, the systems of poor health from our side internally was the team couldn't articulate scope, budget, or schedule because they didn't know what to build. And we had some budget overage. So I intervened. And what did we do to really heal the project? I had a tough conversation with the client, Kristen and I did. I'm like, dude, I don't even know what to build. I can't tell you how long it's going to take. I can't tell you how much money because I have no idea what to build. It can be $10, it can be $1 million. I have no idea. And so we talked to him a little bit about what his business objectives were with the site, right? And then we're like, we need to show a finite amount of work. So take those objectives and go, yeah, the list is long, but it's a finite amount. Like, this is it. This is what go live looks like. And then, has anybody heard of the term of business process management or requirements and documentation? What we ended up doing is taking them through an official business process engagement, which is quite timely, that we did it on like speed, because I was like, I need to get all this information out of them as fast as possible. And so that surfaced something called, for the big deliverables list, and an informed schedule. So, and also some timeline options. Now, the healing the boat, this is like the crux of this conversation, is not only is it a human effort when you heal the project, but sometimes you just take it down to the things that they understand the most. So we did a process discovery, and we did not look at the current, we did not look at the mid-dev site. We did a finite inventory of their as-is process, because that client knew exactly what their business is. And we used that approach to identify the gaps. It's like, don't even look at the site. You show us your old site, show us how do you run the business. We'll understand that and we'll help you translate it over. And we did a very comprehensive but light documentation, because normally you have these beautiful diagrams with boxes and stuff, and that was just too costly and timely to make. So, but what I also did in official process management kind of engagements, you get everybody in the same room and have them talk about the process at the same time, and then they'll be like, oh, you use it like that? No, I use it like this, you know. And so it surfaces a lot of information. So basically I'm like, you guys all have to be on this. And to get this done, we need to have like 4 meetings a week for 2.5 hours each until we get all of the processes walked through. And that was the tough conversation with the client. But then everybody's like, okay. They were super happy because they didn't think anybody was listening to them. So it was great. But at least 2 of our team members needed to be on the phone. And everything was recorded. And at this point, the amount of focused meeting facilitation to like pull the requirements out without them getting like all over the place was an amazing effort. So if you guys have any chances to do some business analysis or do some meeting facilitation classes, I strongly suggest it. It's a wonderful skill to have if you're doing agency work. Social engineering is also what it's called. Just kidding. But very active listening, right? So like, we couldn't check out of these meetings because they're going to tell us an answer, and we'll like very actively, it's like, oh, what does that impact this process over here you said like 2 days ago? Oh yeah, it does. Wow, that's cool. So it's like, we didn't even realize that. And like, okay, well, the dots are connecting, right? And so we encouraged them to talk about what they knew really well, and they got more comfortable, they got more confident, and they knew their business, and they were then letting us know what they needed. And some of these process facilitation skills is you have to be not like comfortable going to a meeting, but you have to be the conductor and lead the meeting and make sure everybody kind of pulls the information out. And you have to have a lot of critical thinking and problem solving. And it was amazing how much subject matter knowledge that we needed on these meetings. So it's well beyond Drupal and well beyond commerce. It was like regular business knowledge and like, oh, magazine subscriptions and memberships and all sorts of things. So it was all this stuff that was like completely tangential to Drupal, but we really had to engage all that information. And it's very clear that we were doing decision guiding, not making, because one of the biggest gripes about the last vendor is that they would just do things and make decisions and just build stuff because that was the best practices of Drupal commerce. And sometimes we don't agree with what they need to do for their business. And you're like, well, I don't know if that's a best practice, but okay, that's the way you run your business. But we heard him, and it ended up being like a balancing act to make sure that we got enough information to build the site, as well as understand their business. So we didn't do the diagrams, which kind of sucks because I really love the little flow charts because they're easy to read. But we had so much information that we needed to capture in the narratives, or like the text of the steps. Like we used spreadsheets to track like the order and decision points of each one of their processes, but we also tied it to the technical thing. We tied every step to the old site and the new site, right? So this was like these great maps of like a business process would be the membership life cycle for, you know, a certain rated professional dancer. And so we would walk through that, and every single page they expected to see, we put it on their old site, but we also mapped it to the new one. So it's it's a big map from the as is to the to be, and then actually that's how we figured out what do we need to build, right? It's like, oh, we're missing that on the old site or on the new Drupal site. Let's put that in. And so these methods are highly based on enterprise process mapping, BPML, business process markup language, metadata information, and requirements management best practices. We had 136 processes. We had over 26 meetings, roughly over 160 meeting hours, and basically the documentation hours is we averaged about 3 hours per process meeting, because the math doesn't look right if it's per process. So it's not a small endeavor, right? And they had a lot of processes like magazine subscriptions and ties into their accounting system, and is way more stuff than just a website, right? But there were some benefits here that we kept progressing. So as we uncovered and clarified these business process, we could actually do parallel discovery and development at very focused areas. And the team can work on clearly defined work, like reducing technical debt again, closing these defined functional gaps, and then address the critical path features. And we really chose to clump the work by process. So somebody owned all the membership things, and somebody owns the commerce things, and somebody owned the shipping things, right? So we've clumped all of the work in something that's very tangible and very similar, so you don't have this like context switching back and forth, not only for the dev team, but for the client. It's a huge deal. And then there's some more bumps in the road. So, because, you know, now it's all getting better or whatever. And then the PM leading the project left our company. And it was not a good time. But we're like, okay, that's all right. But the credit card authorization company incorrectly flagged a test transaction. This all happened on the same day. And so we had massive meltdown from the client, and I've never had such the angry call with them, and I just felt like they're like, bah, 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 bah. And I was like, well, here's all this data that we've proven that it wasn't our problem with the authorized.net, that was them. You know, here's the data trail, but we patiently had to hear this. And at that point, I was like, do I even want to have this client anymore for the company? And it wasn't an easy thing to manage the transition from the PM leaving the company at all. So that was not that was a Tuesday. I know that. I will remember that. That was Tuesday. That was not a good Tuesday. But here is when the leadership tools, oh, you'll love this too, and Daryl was on the meeting, he could testify to this. I asked to cancel the meeting, and we've been having very good, like, repeating meetings, and I said, please, like, something happened at the last minute, can we cancel? And they were so angry. Rah, 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 no, and I was just like, so I had to take a moment, and thank you, Daryl, for jumping in, but I had to take a moment and get up and go to the bathroom and like get a glass of water while they were having the call. And then I had to get back in because there's this amount of grit that you have to have. It's like, all right, they're freaking out because the last time authorized.net did this, they shut down their payment gateway, which stopped all their money. So I understood the intent of that client. And then we have to have a certain amount of personal motivation to help move things along. And then heavy team management for the client and internal team. So a lot of coaching and encouraging, not just your team, but the client. And tons of training and education, and being very patient, lots of recording meetings. And you need to make sure that you're really adaptable and you have a lot of political savvy. Sometimes I don't. I'm very abrupt and very drastically honest, so sometimes I have others jump in and do that for me. But the communication, once again, is a very active listening and compassionate engagement. It was a huge deal to be compassionate and understanding of where they were coming from for success. And then you have to make sure you, of course, do your job, especially as a PM and as a developer, being patient. You have to make sure that you manage your tasks and scheduling fine and be on top of the contract management and budget management. And you really have to be personally organized to deal with a chaotic mess like that. But with determination and patience and a heavy sense of humor, one can get through this, right? But you have to trust in the tools that you've learned, and you have to be very compassionate and patient. But the people on our internal team, they also hear, as much as I am compassionate, I'm also get this shit done now. I don't want to be around it. This is toxic. And so when you ask me, was it worth it? I personally say no for me. For the company, yes. For them, sure. But no, I hate this project. This is a horrible project. I have better things to do as the boss lady. But it needed to be done, and it was a very hard project to fix, right? Most people couldn't jump in and wrangle them out of such missing chaos to get there. And I'm not trying to be all about myself, but it comes down to, I have this toolbox of processes and tools and techniques, and I had to find in my toolbox and my bat belt all of the different things to help move them forward. And I had to be really patient with it. So be kind, keep it simple, be transparent, and also understanding that healing is ongoing. Because just because you think you fixed it one day, the next day a human might be slightly different. And you will need to fix it again. All right, it's 4:23. Do you guys have any questions? Sure, go for it.
Did you get client referrals out of this? How would you? What was some positive, please?
I know, sorry, I didn't mean to bring that down. But do you guys all feel the pain? Okay, good. Well, then this presentation is effective.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Well, no, I did this at the PMI Silicon Valley chapter just a couple weeks ago, and they're like,
Can I give one little anecdote?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Is this a business partner, Kristen?
Yeah.
So,
And she has the Happy Reaper, and I have the mean one, so you guys can see that.
So it was kind of an interesting little thing that happened where right after all of that kind of authorized.net and the world is melting and whatever, and the people left and all this, where we're we're having a little internal huddle on the call, and it was supposed to just be internal. And I noticed there's someone else on the call, right? This is on Zoom, right?
Yeah, somebody had gotten into the bridge.
And then, I'm like, and then at some point I'm like, who's on the call? And then it was one of the client, and I was like, oh, and we were basically, Amy's like, yeah, should we fire them?
Yeah, so the client heard me saying, I am so tired of them treating us like shit. And we need to finish that. They can go somewhere else. I'm going to fire them. And this person on the phone heard that, and boy, they have been so much nicer after that.
Yeah, it was
Because I was like, they can go somewhere else, and I'm like, nobody will want to touch them after they hear this story. And if we can't deal with them as the Compassionate Hook 42 team, and we fired them, nobody's going to want to touch them at all. Yeah, seriously. I did not share that at the PM convention because I was going to get in trouble if I did that, but because that was not me paying attention. But go ahead, Oliver.
So this is the second out of 2 broken project talks I've been to that concluded that it really, in the end, was not worth it. So what are some takeaways from this specific client that you would, pick up as warning signs in advance that you're looking at a client who's not going to be worth it? And can you expand on what you think would be a broken project that's worth healing?
Sure, totally. For this client, because it was so bad that it rolled up to me having to handle it, that's why I say personally it's not, because it screwed up my own professional and personal development and the company development. So, but for the company doing the project, it's a good, I'm talking about it in presentations and stuff, and, it's a very passionate thing. But it's also has a lot of interesting things that go along with it. So it's a wonderful technical challenge, and it's also a very testing personal challenge for folks. Daryl's laughing. Daryl's been a
great personal growth opportunity.
Yeah, seriously, huh? There's a lot of Zen moments that have to happen, but actually after the client's off, I'll curse a lot with the team. Yeah, go ahead.
I wanted to add on to that. So, if another client exactly like this came along, would Hook 42 not take them?
Not if we had a little bit of like elbow room in our team, so we took it on, and it was like, oh, we're just gonna stick our toe in the water, right? We'll give you a little review, and then get sucked back in.
So don't let yourselves get sucked back in. Is that?
No, it didn't look. It was still like kind of on track, but then there's this point where and this is for everybody. If that internal PM, it was a hard point to make sure, like, did we have to intervene much more assertively? Like, we could have done it earlier, right? But I just was like not doing that project. I was doing other things or whatever. So. That's actually a better question, is how early can one person to 1 or 2 management steps away from the project actually see it's in peril? And the things that go back is, why can't you show me a cost, like an estimate of how much time? Or even give me the list of everything that you need to build. Even that, if that person can't do that, then that's an issue, right? That was the biggest kind of... That, in retrospect, that was the biggest thing. But it wasn't clear that they weren't doing it. They were like, yeah, we're just doing stuff. And I'm like...
So I have a related question about that. I had a similar situation with a similar project, and I told them, okay, this is what it's going to take to fix. And they said, that's too much. Give me a lower estimate. What would you advise for that?
Go somewhere else. Or shave down functionality. But I did say with the team, we need to giddy up, and we're going to go super fast. And you guys aren't used to going fast, but you're going to go Aimee fast now. And I'm like, whoop, let's do it. And so we did a very aggressive thing. So you can go, are you ready for this? Because if you want to do this in a compressed way, we can, but you might not be happy. And that's why after the big process meetings, I'm like, dude, I need a break from them, and they needed a break from me. And we just needed to build stuff. Mark?
Are there at least more certified ballroom dancers now? Did the project launch and there was successful outcomes for the client?
The project has a launch path of December.
Okay.
But that means we've only done it for at Focus 6 months, I think. But the first engagement was so tiny and so long. It was trickly. So True Time, I think we will know them for 9 months or something like that. So go ahead.
Elaborate a little more on when you say it's, to you, it's not worth it. Tell me about not worth it because of the amount of time, the amount of angst, or the actual monetary compensation that your company got. So
Yes.
is it functionally?
There's no amount of money that was worth me dealing with that while I was trying to do other things.
So at a different price point, would it be worth it?
Well, for the work that I was doing, people consulted at a much higher price point than we had given them. And so, and also when people engage Kristen and I as like thought leadership and to do the super hard things, we have a higher rate, but basically this is contract management. I was like, I looked at it, I'm like, okay, we'll just slide this through because it should have finite amount of time. But, you know, at that point I should have said, no, you gotta pay me more because of me. And I didn't, because I was like, oh, let's just do this for a couple of weeks. Let's get it out the door. Yeah. Huh?
This will just take a minute.
No, I knew it was going to take some time, but I was just like, but it was finite for me, right?
What did you have a retrospective and say, you and Kristen say, these were the canaries in the coal mine that we didn't see when they came by?
This is my retrospective. And we did, go ahead, Daryl, you and I have talked a lot about this.
So I would say that things from a developer standpoint that made it really hard was that there were no designs, no wireframes, no nothing that the previous company seemed to be working from that they could hand us.
Yeah, no DPS, no EDM.
We had nothing. We had, like, here's a site.
We inherited this site that was half built. And it's a big, complicated site, lots of moving parts inside.
Half built with no clear goals, so any path that is fine.
Yeah, so, and we're matching functionality with 4 old sites. So, which of course do things differently. So what is going to be satisfactory to the client? They don't know, and we don't know.
Right, and the sponsor, when we talked about him, you know, when I talked to, like, said, we are going to have to do these meetings, and I'm sorry, let's get it done. He's like, are you guys figuring out improvements along the way? And I'm like, yeah, we're identifying some points of improvement because, you know, it's the 20-year-old software that they had before, and their business has changed a little bit. And I said, yes, we are, but the team is also reticent to change, so we need to make sure that it's similar enough that they can still do the work on the day it switches over. So that's been a challenge. So, yeah, go ahead.
So, related question, how do you avoid, I've had projects that were otherwise great, but were killed by the client demanding too many meetings. How do you avoid meeting death?
Tie it directly to budget and say this is how much it's costing. You want it built or do you want to talk about it? And also, we actually, at this PM convention, or the PM conference was really good. We talked about the quality of meetings, what makes a good meeting, what's required. Agendas are nice, but it's not just about the agenda. You need to make sure that every meeting has a decision, a clear decision, or more than one. But if you don't have a decision, why the hell are you talking? You know, go ahead, Ryan.
Would you ever have given the experience with them listening on the call, would you ever maybe have maybe you're getting fired, let's see, like a personal improvement plan type of
a PIP for the client?
Because I can use this type of client too, and it's like, I found different, I found that one way I addressed this was invoicing on a regular basis, and then more respect, and I try to approach it from a mutual respect. Yeah, so
we did have a talk with the sponsor about how that was not cool, and they need to do that. So
yeah, I've done, if you don't mind, I've done similar ongoing engagement with the client with multiple projects, and we get burned on one project, and we let them know, okay, next time you have a project of this size, there are going to be additional requirements if you want us to do it for you.
Yeah, and that's the similar thing that has happened before with other clients as well. It's just because you don't know, it's an ongoing relationship, people, yeah, go ahead, Genevieve.
Another question, and just let me know we need to pack up because they have to start pulling the pack.
Okay, thank you for a lovely bad camp. Thank you for coming. And thank you for staying to the end. That was lovely. put them on the session deck. Okay.
Thank you.
Oh, thanks everybody